B is for the Blues by Liam Hogan. As the bellows trundle back and forth, something deep within gives a muffled squeak. The inappropriately named Mexican orderly, Angel, says he'll get an engineer to fix it. But I don't mind. It's reassuring. The noise reminded me that the device is doing its job, the filling and emptying of my lifeless lungs. Angel tells me that the iron lung breathed for its previous occupant, one of the last of the polio victims, for 40 years straight. He expects me to take comfort in this antique, steadfast operation. But the flip side is that surely whoever it was also died in it. And it already resembles a coffin too closely for my liking. People walking past my door do a double take at the sight of it and stop, stare. One middle-aged daughter uses it to chide her wheelchair-bound mother, pointing at the monstrous museum piece, warning of the dangers of a continued nicotine habit. But my 7 coffin nails did not have filter tips. They had copper jackets. Besides deflating my lungs like burst balloons, one of these, intended for my skull perhaps, shattered my jaw in 5 places, rendering speech and positive ventilation impossible. And so here I lie, a miracle of survival, waiting for an organ donor to bequeath his lungs, waiting for an album to go platinum, to make sure I'm first in line to receive it. And Hale, not put off by the fact that my jaw is wired together, asked me what I do, or anyway, what I did. I typed my reply watching a small TV screen that shows my fingers hovering over the keyboard. There's no other way to see what my disembodied limbs within the steel frame are doing. I tell him I was a music producer. He glances around the tastefully decorated private room and excitedly asks if I produced anyone famous, eager for the reflected glory that looking after a big shot might bring. I tell him Johnny B. Halkin, and he looks disappointed. I type, the dude on death row, and his smile returns. Ah, I hear about him lots. Next Monday, yeah? I give him a small nod. He pauses in the doorway. What does the B stand for? He asks. But he's too far away from the screen to see, so I don't bother typing a reply. I merely raise my eyebrows, a shrug without the shoulders. There are many things I changed about Johnny. His name is probably the least interesting of them. Without me, he wouldn't have been a blues player at all. I still don't know why he came to me. Maybe mine was the first sign he saw, and I doubt he read past the top 2 lines. James McCracken, music producer and agent. He certainly didn't read the name of the studio, Blues All the Way, because he sat there twanging his cheap guitar, singing some frothy country pop song. As he strummed the final chord, a goofy grin on his face like a dog that had just done a good trick and was expecting a prize, I thought, do I throw the kid a bone? I handed him my Gibson. Slow it down some. Sing it as a song about happiness long gone, a song of bitter remembrance. And try a slide or two. He frowned. Gee, Mr. McCracken, I kid you not. He said it just like that. Gee, Mr. McCracken, I'd rather play my own guitar. I patted the old maple wood body. This here is the best blues guitar in the world, son. The favorite instrument of both Chuck Berry and B.B. King. If the devil meets you at the crossroads and offers a trade, and it ain't one of these, he ain't playing straight. This one belonged to Dwayne Allman himself. John Lee Hooker once picked it up, struck a few chords, and declared it admirable. So I guess it might be good enough for you. His face was a blank. He hadn't recognized a single name I'd say, and I'd just name-checked 4 of the greatest blues guitarists of all time. I came this close to giving up on the rube. He shrugged, plucked each string in turn, and then began to play. Well, I don't know what you call it, but it wasn't blues, and it wasn't a lot better than last time. He struggled to play at the slower tempo. He sure as hell didn't know how to slide. And still he wore that goofy grin. Well, I was just about done for the day, so I told him if he didn't mind waiting around a half hour, I'd buy him a drink. Offer him some free advice. He didn't mind and wandered around the studio, looking at the signed portraits and framed gig posters. To be honest, I was all ready to give him the gentle brush-off, tell him his music, competent though it was, wasn't going to create any waves in this city. Suggest he got a proper job or went home or whatever his plan B was. But before I even had the chance, he started in on his life story. He told me about the little town he grew up in, his 11th birthday gift of a guitar, mainly about his childhood sweetheart, Mary Lou. It was her who packed him off to the big city to make or break it as a musician. The deal was, if he made it, she'd join him. If not, then he'd go home, work on her folks' farm. No regrets was their motto, and either way, they'd be back together in 6 months' time, married in 9, and boy did he smile when he told me that. That was when it all fell into place. This dumb ox of a farm boy, his life was a straight and narrow road, stretching into a rosy future. Even him being there with me in this seedy little bar, 3 in the afternoon, was just an exciting adventure, something to tell kids when they were big enough to sit on his knee. It was one act, youthful rebellion. No wonder he played with such a grin. If I was to produce blues music from this wet behind the ears kid, well, I'd have to produce the blues. No regrets, blues is a sound of regret, the song of loss. If I had to buy him a dog and then shoot it, I would. You couldn't miss what you never had, so I give him a taste, success, money, fame, and then somehow contrive to whisk it away. First, the most important thing to go, though, was the one thing he already had. His homecoming queen, Mary Lou. I was figuring on this being a long-term project, 10 years maybe. Introduce him to the bottle, get him clean, relapse, get his heart broken, have him break a few hearts in return, all the while playing the small bars, the low dives, honing his skills. You could say that I exceeded my wildest dreams, because in the end it only took 18 months. I'm still not entirely sure where I went wrong. It was going so well. I got him a support act or two with some of the smaller venues. I even lined him up for a city-sponsored music festival, a week or so after Mary Lou's 6-month deadline expired. I should have known he'd want to invite Mary Lou, but that was, I thought, a good thing. He'd be all gushing with excitement, and she'd sit for what it was, an unpaid 10-minute slot in the slow middle of the afternoon. And afterwards, still high on his biggest audience to date, Johnny introduced me to his Mary Lou. She looked at me shrewdly, and I knew I was in for a hard time. I pitched it carefully, listing the gigs he had coming up, mentioning a favorable review in the local listed magazine, and then spoiled it somewhat by saying that many blues players take years to become established. And by that measure, Johnny was doing pretty well already. And whose idea was it to play the blues? She said, nailing me with an icy stare. It didn't help, and it wasn't supposed to, that the studio flat I'd found for Johnny to live in was in a rough part of town. Even less that it was directly over a cat house. So, of course, Johnny didn't want her staying with him, and of course he got flustered trying to explain why. I offered them the use of my place, but Mary Lou decided she'd get the late Greyhound back instead. The party was far from romantic. 3 months, she said coldly. You got 3 months, and then you have to start looking for a new bride. And that was the night that the brothel madam made good her promise to tell me if Johnny ever availed himself of her services. So I thought everything was going just fine. I already had plans for that 3-month extension, ways I could use Johnny's moral slip to drive the wedge irreparably between them. I never got the chance. The big galoot fessed up. He was off and running back to Mary Lou to try and salvage the relationship. Leave her to cool down, I advised. Send her some flowers. Besides, you're playing JoJo's on Thursday, and I hear it's sold out. That was the first gig that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. First time he played the blues as they were meant to be played. Finally, we were getting somewhere, and I made tentative noises that we ought to lay down a few tracks, test the water. So it was a shot. We opened the door to the studio a few evenings later, expecting Johnny. Find Mary Lou, a semi-automatic grasped in both hands. She didn't wait for my protest, for my appeal to mercy. And everything after that I've had to piece together from the police reports in the trial. 7 times she shot me. I wonder if she heard the thundering on the stairs as she turned the gun on herself. Johnny arrived too late, but soon enough to take full responsibility for what had happened. First-degree murder and attempted murder. The death penalty was a foregone conclusion. The kicker, twist in the tale, was the music-loving judge who heard Johnny's half-recorded demo tracks and decided that he should be allowed to record an album on death row, as long as the proceeds were split between a gun crime charity and his victims, namely Mary Lou's folks and myself. I still wonder, when I listen to the achingly plaintive riffs and stripped down, almost mumble lyrics, what Mary Lou found out, and whether, when she confronted me in the doorway to my recording studio, something in the expression in my face told her that what she found out was true, sealed the fate for all 3 of us. If my coma had lasted as long as it did, if that last shot hadn't shattered my jaw, if there hadn't been a delay in fitting the keyboard inside the iron lung, or even if the lawyer hadn't played me the first cut of the award-winning prison album and asked me what I thought, then I might have told the police who really shot me, might have saved Johnny from jail, and the dark cloud over him might have had the faintest traces of a silver lining. Even so, I'm still kind of hoping for a stay of execution and a second album. But it seems unlikely since Johnny refuses to support an appeal. As Johnny would tell you himself, everyone knows the B is for the blues, and the blues are a bitch.